Our planet has a big, round, beautiful moon that lights up our night sky. It has been with us for billions of years and is part of our solar system just like we are. But have you ever wondered what would happen if Earth suddenly had no moon? Would life still be possible? Would people even exist? What would happen to the ocean tides? Let's find out. No moon means no light. The most noticeable change in the absence of the moon would be the lack of its light in the night sky. Instead of seeing a bright disk hanging in the firmament, we'd see nothing but a canopy of deep blue, and there would be no soft moonlight either. The absence of the moon would mean that at night we would be surrounded by impenetrable darkness, and it would be an eerie sight. This is because although the moon doesn't emit any light itself, it reflects sunlight. That's why it shines so brightly in our night sky. In fact, the moon is about 7 times brighter than the Milky Way, which is already pretty dim. We can tell how bright the moon is by measuring its apparent magnitude, which is -26. The smaller the number, the brighter the object in the night sky. For comparison, the brightness of Venus is 4, Mars is 13, and Jupiter is 29. You can clearly see how much brighter the moon is than other celestial bodies. And this is despite the fact that the moon is much farther away from Earth than the planets listed above. So without the moon reflecting the sun's rays, our planet would plunge into total darkness at night. More darkness means more problems. The absence of moonlight would also mean that nocturnal animals would have a hard time finding food. Animals such as owls, bats, and nocturnal bullfrogs rely on moonlight to hunt. Without it, they'd either have to look for another food source or move somewhere else. Plants pollinated by nocturnal insects would also suffer. In general, all living things that have adapted to life in the moonlight would die out. And not only that, but many animals that are active during the day would also have to make adjustments to their daily routine. Birds who use the sun and the moon to navigate would get lost without the moon. Many species of birds fly hundreds of kilometers every year during migration, and they could easily get off course without a bright disk in the sky to help them navigate. Also, the moon helps us determine directions when we get lost in the woods. This is thanks to a line called the Milky Way, which is an arch across the night sky that runs from horizon to horizon. The Milky Way consists of hundreds of billions of stars and looks like a faint band. The center of this band lies exactly along the plane of the ecliptic, where the sun moves during the year. The moon orbits our planet in precisely the same plane. Therefore, it always appears either to the right or to the left of the sun. When we see the sun in the sky, we can immediately tell which direction it's facing. And if we add the position of the moon to our orientation, we can determine fairly accurately what time it is. This is very important when you're lost in the woods, since you need to know what time it is. Without the moon, we lose another vital thing: nighttime temperatures. The moon reflects the sun's rays and heats the Earth to a certain extent. Without it, our planet would experience significant temperature changes, and this would affect the climate and weather. This is because heat from the moon reaches us through space waves. They're electromagnetic waves with a wavelength of 1 millimeter to 30 centimeters. These space waves come from the moon in the direction of the sun and from the Earth's surface in all directions. Space waves from the moon heat the Earth's surface during the night, preventing it from cooling too much. Without the moon, the incoming space waves would be significantly less intense. And at night, the temperature on the Earth's surface would drop sharply. The average temperature on our planet is 15 degrees Celsius, but without the moon, it would be at least 10 degrees colder. The consequences of such a sharp decrease in temperature would be catastrophic. All forms of life would die out, and Earth would become a lifeless frozen planet. No moon means no tides. One of the main reasons why the moon exists is to cause tides on Earth. The moon exerts a powerful force of gravity on our planet, and this force isn't equally distributed. The side of the Earth facing the moon experiences stronger gravity than the opposite side. As a result, the water on the near side gets pushed a few meters higher. And the water on the far side of the planet also rises because Earth's rotation makes it bulge a little at the equator. Thus, the moon causes to high tides a day, but that's not all. The moon affects not only the water in the oceans, but also the water in the human body. About 60% of our body is water, and the moon's gravitational pull affects this water. Our ancestors learned to fish during the new moon and full moon phases. This is because during these periods, the ocean waters receded further than usual, exposing more land and making it easier to catch fish. But this wasn't the only reason people used to go fishing during the full moon. Back in ancient times, they noticed that the full moon influenced a person's behavior. Criminals who committed violent crimes were often caught during the full moon phase. Prisoners who needed to be executed during this period simply couldn't control themselves and attacked the guards, sometimes even biting their noses off. However, the moon didn't only affect criminals. People also became more emotional and more likely to engage in fights. There was even a theory that mental illness began to develop more rapidly during the full moon. Even now, scientists are trying to figure out how the moon affects humans. Researchers have found that during the full moon, pregnant women are more likely to go into labor, and heart attacks and emergency room visits increase. And all of this is due to the fact that the moon's gravitational pull affects not only the water on Earth, but also our body. Moreover, it turns out that the moon's influence on the tides is much greater than that of the sun. Although the sun is much larger and hotter, the force of gravity that it exerts on the Earth's water is almost 3 times less than that of the moon. And this is because the sun is much farther away. But what would happen to the tides if Earth suddenly had no moon? Without a moon, the tides would weaken significantly. The sun would have a greater impact on the oceans, and the water would rise twice as much during spring tides. However, the difference between high and low tide would become less significant. Currently, during spring tides, the water level can rise by almost 20 meters. In places like the Bay of Fundy in Canada, the tidal wave rises and falls twice a year. Residents of nearby towns have to protect themselves from it by building dams and seawalls. But that's not all. The absence of the moon would lead to changes in the duration of the tides. Currently, the lunar day lasts about 27 days. And that's how long it takes for the moon to orbit the Earth once. A year on Earth has 365 days, which means that the moon orbits our planet 13 times a year. But without the moon, the Earth would rotate on its axis in exactly 24 hours. And there would be 2 high tides every 12 hours. Many people think that the moon's gravitational pull affects not only the tides, but also the occurrence of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. But it's not true. The fact is that the moon doesn't just orbit around Earth, but both planets orbit around a common center of mass. That is, the Earth also pulls the moon towards it. Because of this, the moon moves around our planet not in a circle, but along a slightly elongated orbit. The Earth and the moon are constantly moving relative to each other. In addition, the sun exerts a force on the moon, and this makes the orbit even more complex. The gravitational forces that the moon and sun exert on the Earth's crust cause our planet to bulge a bit at the equator. And this explains why the equatorial diameter of the Earth is 43 kilometers larger than its polar diameter. But the moon doesn't affect the internal processes inside the Earth. Scientists have analyzed many earthquakes and have never found a connection between their occurrence and the moon's phases. The same goes for volcanic eruptions, so don't worry, the moon won't suddenly decide to destroy our planet. It's hard to imagine what life on Earth would be like without the moon. This celestial body has accompanied our planet for billions of years and has become an integral part of our lives. The moon affects not only the tides and the climate, but also the human psyche. Who knows what would happen to people if one day they looked up into the night sky and saw no familiar disk in the firmament? Would they survive? What do you think?